Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome once again, and we have to have our little extra music.
Evening, man.
Thank you, one and all, for joining us today on another Modern Sales Meltdown. And as you can tell, this show is not run by AI, but maybe it'd run on time if it did. I don't know, but so much messaging out there seems to be just the product of AI. And what makes it worse, this is my personal bugbear. Obviously, I focused on LinkedIn, but what makes it first is people are putting out AI messaging and then responding to it using AI, hence removing any humanity from the interaction whatsoever. The humans at either end could well be oblivious to what's going on. And when we get almost at the point of generative AI that doesn't require human intervention at all, decisions, directions, concepts, ideas could all be happening. And you come in at the last minute as the human, and what's been going on here? So today,
some people will hear that. Some people will hear that, and they'll be, looking forward to it. Very much looking forward to it. I don't any longer need to hire salespeople. I don't any longer need to be, messing around, trying to close deals, trying to develop deals with dodgy human beings who are prone to dishonesty, who are prone to not following up when they're supposed to,
right?
Bone idle, don't want to do it. Yeah. All those psychological tricks of the trade.
Everything that wouldn't affect an AI, I guess, is what you're saying.
Take ages.
Right. So what's your answer? If people sound like AI, should we be encouraging it?
Look, I don't know many people who are not using AI now.
It's become the norm almost.
Yes. And it's cool. And what that means actually is that people are starting to use it. I saw something the other day that said something along the lines of, I need to try and get back to that source, that 3/4 of people in business are using it to some degree.
I actually thought it was higher than that, but I get that. I
mean, it's pretty clever, and it's easy to use. You just go onto one of the websites and you don't even have to subscribe. You type in a prompt and hey presto, all of this stuff before your very eyes gets churned out. Write me a proposal that will sell my sales consultancy to a music company. Bosh, it's done. Just send it, man. And there's a great advantage to be able to do things at speed, and you'll get there quicker. We've already had, for anybody using a CRM has been able to program in automated responses for quite some time now, quite a few years. And I've got them. I've got one for my objection handling masterclass. You go onto the website, you pick a date, you fill in your form, sends you confirmation, sends you reminders, sends you a follow-up after the event, all of that kind of stuff. And it's cool. And then every so often I see sort of responses pop into my inbox where somebody's thought that it was me who replied to it, and it feels good. It feels like, wow, that's a weight off my shoulders. However, there is an over deployment in things where really you need to engage your brain. And I just wanted to sort of touch on those few things that we should use it on, because you are sounding like a machine. You sound like AI. And even if you're not using AI, you still sound like AI.
Well,
and
I was looking at Gartner report, which I know you're
big fan of Gartner, my previous employer.
Right. And their key takeaways are that it increases efficiency through automation. It enhances real-time decision making, and it gives you scalable flexibility. You can position your organization for long-term competitive advantage and ensures customer trust. But what then begs the question, as far as I'm concerned, enhances customer trust with who? Because you're not trusting the customer, you're trusting the AI's voice or thing that was interacting with you.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I nearly got a deal with somebody who, when was it? It was a few months ago. I nearly got a deal with somebody whilst talking to their AI, who nearly committed their business to something. Yeah, something quite big. And then halfway through, the person sort of pulled the plug, and then I got a private message saying, "Oh, really sorry about that."
So the AI was taking them down a route, and the humans only suddenly realized at the last second.
I was prompting it. I was prompting it to take me down that route. You know, I was conning it into doing something. So we need to be careful with it. That's one thing. And we all know we need to be careful with it. And yes, actually, the people who are doing this in an intelligent way are being cautious, and they're being thoughtful. And so I want to just share some of the things that they are doing to be cautious and careful and mindful and getting the responses that they want. And when I say that you're sounding like AI, it's not just when you're using AI that you're sounding like AI. AI is the lowest common denominator of everything that's out there. Okay, it's combining all of the written, if we're talking about writing, it's combining all of the written stuff that people have put out and churning it. Even if you say sound like a human, or even if you give it a tone and you give it a great prompt with a wonderful tone, it still sounds like AI. Why? Because spam was always a bit AI.
What you're really meaning, I'm thinking, is you sound like a robot. You sound like non-human. You sound
like a robot. Non-human. Now, people have been sounding like robots since long before AI.
Absolutely, because for templated, repetitive templating, where dear customer name, that's the funniest thing I've ever received, though, is when I get a thing saying, "I've read your profile. I think you're a great fit, dear company name."
Dear company name, or dear David Chernick, David@treacle.com.
Yeah, exactly. Dear D Chernick.
Or when I used to never bother filling in the form, dear D.
Yeah, exactly. It's because it's all about rubbish in, rubbish out. And
so that's not a function of AI. What the AI has been enabled is for that to be scaled. Okay. Yes. And the number of times I've had like inbound inquiries from people, and they sound like the AI, and then I found out it was not AI, it was them actually writing the message. So back in the day when MailChimp was taking off, I remember seeing some research on the most opened subject lines. And something that really stood out there was that one way to increase your open rates on your mailing is to introduce a spelling mistake into the subject line.
Yes,
you're more likely to be open with a spelling mistake because you're trying to sound
human. A way of identifying that, or making it sound like your posts on LinkedIn aren't written by an AI, is to do things slightly grammatically wrong. That is it's so crazy that going back 5 years, people would be shouting at you if you made a grammar mistake. Now it's become a point of reassurance.
So here's the thing. I have got a solution.
Oh,
I know. And it sort of goes like this. It starts off, and this has been something that I've mentioned quite a few times on our show. which is don't outsource something until you have mastered it.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is also a bit of a Gartner thing. It's something I learned at Gartner. You know, when I was at Gartner, you know, outsourcing was all the rage. Huge IT outsourcing projects taking over government departments, and none of them, or very few of them, resulted in a successful deployment of software.
It was always actually at the rollout that it suddenly became clear that they'd bitten off more than they could chew.
Much more than they could chew. There had been mission creep during everything. You know, there's so many requirements that it can possibly go right, and you know, and it was in every government department all around the world and big businesses. It was very, very difficult to get an outsourced IT infrastructure and management and software that actually ended up being successful according to the original plan.
Yeah,
Why?
It's a sad thing, really.
It was very sad, very expensive, and there were some highly publicized cases where you know, software companies and IT infrastructure companies and outsourcing companies really got their fingers burnt, and government departments got their fingers burnt, big businesses, right? So do not outsource something until you've mastered it. Outsourcing does not solve your problem. Yeah. So this is the solution, is to have a huge amount of human interaction when you are designing your system. Don't just go into a new system and program it to do the things that you think it should be doing without testing it. Yeah, and use humans to test it. Yeah, go back through your most successful deals, analyze the process that you went through in order to get them from being an unknown person into a prospect, into a qualified lead, into a actual sales opportunity, into somebody that had been closed, where you had objection handled and then onboarded. Follow that process where you have done it successfully.
Right.
Outsource that.
Well, that's the critical part, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a little bit like
only outsource it if you've nailed every aspect of it down and have taken into account the error box, the mission creep, the bits in between it. It should be. I mean, this is me talking cloud cuckoo land, I know, but it should be that you can predict what will happen 4 or 5 months down the line after it's been implemented, not that there's a complete divergence.
Yeah, and here's something that I personally have learned, which I sort of knew, but I didn't really put into practice until fairly recently, which is that I think for most people, outsourcing everything in one go to AI is I've never seen it work so far. All right, so if you're a beginner at it, or unless you're anything other than an absolute master at closing deals using AI, don't outsource the whole thing in one go, even if you do know the entire process. Do it in an agile way. Yeah, take a little bit that you know works. So, for example, if you have constructed a outreach campaign, a sort of a door opening campaign to get people into your pipeline, and that little bit you have mastered, fine. Document that, script all of that, and then implement that part of the process. Yeah. Until then, carry on trying to master those little bits of the process, and carry on using your AI for all of your desk research and stuff like that, where I think that provides a good platform for learning how to do desk research. You know, again, there is loads of useful tools out there for avoiding having to buy lists, for example.
I'm more and more thinking that list purchasing, because of just how quick these lists become unusable, because it just takes for someone to take themselves onto the telephone preference service, or to or change their marketing requirements, and suddenly your list becomes partially invalid, and you don't know which part's invalid, and you're laying yourself open to potential prosecution.
For sure. So this is a very good. This is a very good place to start. I'm trying to target accountants in and near Watford that are 5 to 10 employees that have been established for more than 10 years, all of that kind of stuff, go into Perplexity or whichever one you want to use and put in that query. And you can increase the different parameters on that query as much as you want, right? You can even get it to present you the data in the format that you like, right? And then you'll get your list to start with. That's a great place to start practicing proper use of AI in sales, is to figure out who you're targeting. Because, all it's going to be doing there is looking up through public access databases, organizing data, combining bits of data together. Yeah, we like it for that. Don't just say to AI, right, Perplexity, write me a perfect sales pitch that will open any door into an accountant. Yeah, using the tone of a master salesperson. Yeah, because you will get the same old shit out that everybody else uses.
Same old. And the trouble is,
you will end up making yourself sound like you're just a shit salesperson. At best.
All right.
And you probably are not a shit salesperson. You are a human being with a brain on your head.
This is true.
Has feelings and empathy and lived experiences and product knowledge, applied product knowledge, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. So use all of that, master the process, then outsource the process.
All right. So, David, as per usual, I'm going to ask you to summarize in one nugget. What should people do? I use the AI for everything. I don't even change channels on my television before checking with AI. What's our overall feeling? I mean, you're saying make sure that you know how to do it yourself before you entrust it to a machine. That
you're taking the words out of my mouth. And in the background, carry on practicing. Yeah, this is a skill, a competence. Carry on practicing. Knock yourselves out with practicing. In every element of your life, you can practice. Come up with a playlist of music that sounds a little bit like grunge, and you'll find all of that. Yeah, use it for that.
All right. Well, look, guys, thank you very much for spending time with us today. I hope you didn't find that dismayed you too much. We have to coexist with AI. It's part of our present now. We can't ignore it. You're not even a Luddite if you ignore it. You're a fool. But
embrace it.
But realize that they still have to have a human element in this, because it's still humans at some point selling to humans. Until we have our first AI company, which with our AI overlords, until that time, humans are still involved. And while humans are still involved, we'll need human salesmen. Until next time, keep your hands firmly on the tiller, feet on the ground, and
reaching for the stars.
Reach for the stars, damn it. And you might catch the moon. And always remember, look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.
Ciao, ciao.